Florida law prohibits feeding, disturbing, or capturing alligators. The people in this chapter don't do the right thing, but I know that you will. The canoes catch up with Missy. First she hears talking and laughing in the dip of paddles. Then one paddle thunks the side of the canoe. She floats beside a branch in the grassy water. The canoes close in.
Hey, look over there.
A man says, pointing to her.
It's a baby alligator.
Cool, man.
Another says,
It's so small.
Look, Daddy.
A boy holds up a plastic alligator.
It looks just like my toy.
The boy's father scoops Missy in a net.
Let's have some fun.
Missy struggles. He holds the netting with one hand and the handle with the other, trying to dump her into the canoe. He shakes harder. The claws of one foot tangle in the net. She dangles there. He swings her lightly against the side of the canoe. Her foot twists free and she thumps into the bottom of the canoe. The boy pulls his feet up onto the seat.
Wow, will it bite?
Yes, it will bite. Stay back.
The boy's father watches the other canoes crowd around to watch.
Throw that toy gator down. Let's see what the alligator does with it.
On the bottom of the canoe, Missy doesn't move. She stands on her 3 good legs. Her hurt leg throbs. One man calls,
Heads up, we're drifting into that log jam over there.
They paddle the canoes away from the danger. One of the boys asks,
What's that gator doing?
Nothing.
The father says. He paddles the canoe. The warmth of the sun and the movement of the canoe lull Missy. Mile after mile, the canoes push south. Missy doesn't move, so the boy watches the birds. Kingfishers zigzag from shore to shore. Egrets and herons skim above the river. The boy turns to his father.
Don't they get tired of getting surprised by us?
Huh? Are you tired?
The father asks.
No, I'm watching the birds. That same white one flies away when we come close. It only goes a little way down the river. We surprise it again and again. How come it doesn't get tired of doing that?
I don't know, son, but I'm tired of this gator. It might as well have been a toy, too.
Reaching down, he grabs Missy by the tail and flips her overboard. She swims as fast as she can away from the canoe. Hi, I'm Carol Mahler, author of Adventures in the Charlotte Harbor Watershed. Today, I'm at the television studios of the School District of Lee County, and with me today is Kayton Nedza.
Well, thank you, Carol. I came from the Hardy County Outdoor Classroom, and I've talked to you guys. I recognize you from one of those other shows. I talked to you some about different stuff. We talked about little baby alligators early on. Yes, we did. Today we're going to talk about alligator behavior. In addition to a regular eyelid, alligators have transparent eyelid. It's kind of like swim goggles. It protects the eye, so when they swim underwater, they don't get that dirt in their eye. Yeah, see, and alligators can close their ears. Now, probably some of your teachers think y'all can close your ears, but you can't really do it. But alligators can. They can close their ears so when they dive down in the water doesn't get in there, okay? They can also close their throats so they can bite and chew underwater without water washing all the way down yonder into their stomach. Now, you don't go out in the lake and go swimming out yonder and open your mouth underwater because that water go right down, you might drown. I don't want to be accused of having you guys drown, but alligators can do that, and they can chew underwater, and then they can come up and then they'll swallow with their head up above water so they don't get water down in their stomachs. Small alligators can eat minnows, they can eat insects, tadpoles, and frogs. Large alligators, well, large alligators can eat raccoons. They can eat turtles, snakes, and animals as large as a deer or a Florida panther. Strong acid in their stomach digests the bones and the teeth of everything that they eat. They swallow small prey whole and will rip large prey into big hunks before swallowing it. Now, Florida law prohibits any of you from going out and feeding alligators or catching alligators or even messing with alligators. So make sure you leave the alligators alone.
Thanks, Kayton. And do you have any stories about seeing alligators out in the wild? You know, we have a pretty wonderful specimen behind us here.
Yeah, that'd be a big alligator you got there now. Now, see, if he was really like up that close, I wouldn't turn my back on him, you see. But I know that's just a picture of one, and that's not quite as scary. Let's see, stories about alligators. I got a lot of stories about alligators. Oh, I know one you might be interested in hearing. Now, the person that edited this book, Moran Hilgendorf.
Yes.
Yeah, she's with the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program. And I had the occasion to have them come with me on a little canoe trip down the Peace River one day. Well, before the trip, I'd talked to them, and I told them that if we were really lucky, we might see us a big alligator. And she said, how big? I said, it's a big alligator. It might be as big as maybe 10, 12, maybe bigger feet longer than that. Yes, sir. And they said, okay, that sounds good. So we went out. Now, the day before the trip, I had my 8th graders out yonder in the canoes, and we went down to that area, and guess what? We had not seen that big alligator for a couple of years. But that day we were out there, and sure enough, there was that big old alligator laying there by the bank. I said, Mr. Alligator, sir, could you please, sir, be here tomorrow, because I got some people coming down with me, and I don't think they believe that you're as big as you is. Well, sure enough, the next day we loaded up, and we had a whole pile of people coming in canoes and kayaks and stuff, and we were going down the river. And as we came down there, we passed this little old alligator on the right-hand side. It's about 6 feet long. And Moran said, is that the alligator you're talking about? I said, no, ma'am, that's only about a 6-foot alligator. I'm talking about a big alligator. And so we paddled on a little farther down, and I looked over there on that bank. And over yonder on that bank, there was the big alligator. And I was saying, thank you, Lord, for having that big alligator be here today. And so as we paddled up to that big alligator, not up to him now, I made a mistake there. We didn't paddle up to that alligator, no, sir. We stayed out in the middle of the river, and as we paddled past that big old alligator, he was laying up there on the bank, and there was about another 6-foot alligator laying right down to the next of him. And Moran said to me, that was the biggest alligator she'd ever seen out in the wild anywhere, and then she believed that I was telling her the truth.
Well, thanks so much for telling me that story, Kayton. That's a great story. And thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for having me come down here, and thank you for all the kids coming out here, and maybe they'll remember some of this stuff, and maybe they'll read this great book that you wrote so well, and I'm just thankful that you had me come.
Beside a branch, Missy floats under the bridge for Brownville Road. Just south of it is Brownville Park. She watches a woman and a teenage girl in kayaks.
Remember the time when the water was so low?
The woman asked.
We had our canoe then. I was very young.
Her daughter says.
It was a drought. Didn't we have to get out and walk across the sandy places? But it wasn't sandy, Mom. It was yucky. We sank in up to our knees.
The mother laughed.
I do remember. We were so happy to find some deeper water to wash that muck off our legs.
Soon they are far away. Missy floats along the west shore. Vines with heart-shaped leaves seem to smother the trees. On the vines are small growths that look like brown potatoes. The vines make a dense shade, so no other plants grow beneath them. Above, a panther naps on a thick oak branch. Missy dives in the river. She surfaces at the center where a bald cypress grows. Crowded around the base of the tree are cypress knees. Part of the root system, they may help support the tree in the water. A plastic bottle filled with sand and water is wedged there. Many creatures hide here. As a minnow slips past her, Missy grabs and eats it. Then she moves south with the river. Missy swims into a hollow log. It is full of water and open on one side. A sound louder than 100 cicadas startles a mottled duck. As it starts to fly, it seems to run across the water on its webbed feet. The humming echoes from either side of the river. Missy watches a flat-bottomed green boat skim by. Its wake rocks the log. The water sloshes inside. Missy can smell the exhaust fumes and the drips of oil from the boat engine. Before the waves calm, the noise stops. Missy hears another throbbing. A truck with a trailer backs down the DeSoto Park boat ramp. Someone pushes and pulls the boat and winches it onto the trailer. As the truck drives up the ramp, water pours from the engine and boat. Missy leaves her hiding place. She swims along the east shore. She can hear the thumping of feet. People and dogs jog and walk the trail in Morgan Park. Then she passes under the wide concrete piers for the old bridge and new bridges of State Road 70. Cars and trucks drive to and from Arcadia. Thick pine forests once grew on the banks. They were cut for lumber. Many trees in the Peace River Valley have been harvested or cleared away for development. In the warm shallows, Missy hunts for food. She swallows some frog eggs floating in the grasses. Then she feels movement. Cows amble into the river. As one grazes near Missy, a grasshopper flies up. Missy lunges to catch it. The cow looks at Missy and keeps eating. Missy hears a noise like a trumpet. A sandhill crane calls. Another glides with it and they land in the grass. Their long bills find insects to eat in the ground. Cattle egrets also feed with the cows. They snap up bugs that the cows frighten. An egret perches on the back of a cow to eat bugs. Cow manure falls on the sand and in the water, and Missy swims away. In places, the riverbank is steep and high. In others, the ground slopes to the water. In the early 20th century, phosphate rock was dug from the riverbed. The sand left over from the mining changed the shape of the banks. Missy rests on the slope of a sandbar under a willow tree. Ridges in the sand mark the waves of water. She feels a humming, and then she hears it. An airboat skims by. It throws a spray of wind and water. It feels like rain. It chases a school of minnows toward her. Missy snaps up 1, 2, 3. Hi, I'm Carol Mahler, author of Adventures in the Charlotte Harbor Watershed. Today, I'm at the television studios of the School District of Lee County. And with me today is Kayton Nedza.
Well, thank you, Carol. I'm from the Hardy County Outdoor Classroom, and I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about beef cattle. Beef cattle, yes, sir. I bet some of y'all have had hamburgers, and you wondered where that hamburger meat came from. Well, back in the 1500s, the Spanish brought beef cattle to Florida. By the late 1700s, the Seminole Indians had the largest herd of beef cattle in the whole state. During the Civil War in the 1860s, beef cattle from Florida supplied beef to the Confederate Army. And during the 1890s, cowmen fought range wars for cattle ownership. And those times were wilder than the Wild West with Mr. Remington out there in the wild road, drew all those pictures of cows. He came to Florida he did, and he drew pictures of the Florida cows and drew pictures of the cowmen that went out there on the range and slept with them at night to keep rustlers from stealing them. Today, Florida is one of the top 12 states that supply cattle for beef. Many ranches fence cows from swamps and riverbanks, and they burn grasslands as part of a natural cycle of fire. Many acres of ranches are native Florida lands, which serve as wildlife habitat. Now, if you look here, you'll see that these are present-day cows being used on a cattle drive to kind of replicate the cattle drives that they used to have way back in the 1800s. Because in those times, that was back before the railroads came in here, and they would take all those cows, and they would take them out there, and they would run them across the range for miles and miles. They'd drive them till they got to a place where they could load them on the boats and they could ship them out and sell them, because there wasn't many people living in Florida. But we had a lot of cows, and they'd go all the way down to Cuba, and they'd sell them in Cuba, and they'd get paid in gold. And they'd bring that gold. There's one man, Mr. Ziba King, from up in DeSoto County. He was a rich and powerful man. And he'd go down yonder, and he'd sell off his cows, and he'd bring that gold back, and he could leave the bags of gold sitting on the front porch of his house, knowing that nobody was going to mess with it. Because if they did, they would have wished they hadn't.
Now, Kayton, today sometimes people talk about cracker cows. Now, what are cracker cows?
You see, the cracker cow, it was a cow like what the Spanish first brought over here in the 1500s. Now, you see, it got out there and got wild in the woods. They had long horns and stuff, and people just couldn't go out and round them up, you see. So they brought them, they just kind of left them out there. And then, of course, the people left Florida for a while, and before long, there were cows all over the place. And so then, when the settlers, the pioneers came in, they were able to round up these cows, and they'd be able to sell them and stuff. Well, anyhow, the cracker cow was a very, very tough cow. It could live off about nothing. It could eat palmettos, and it could eat wiregrass. It's not like the cows in the picture here. These are brought in from other places, and they taste a lot better beef-producing cows. So that's why we use them today. They called them cracker cows because cowmen in those days, in the 1800s, they used big old bull whips. Now, they didn't hit the cow with it. They take that whip, and they make a loud popping sound right behind the cow. And the cow would move out of the palmetto patch, so then they could put a rope around it and brand it or whatever.
Thanks for talking with me today, Kayton. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for having me come today, and I hope to come back and see you all again sometime.
For free classroom materials, please visit our website at www.chnep.org.